Dragon Riders, Kaze no Kaeru, by Night Dragon 0. Firestorm's perspective. I sat watching Jade pace around with an unnatural sense of anxiety, nervously twitching his Charizard tail behind him. Our group had moved a little further off the road so we wouldn't be seen by anyone else. We'd found a nice spot on a cliff overlooking the ocean. Between Jade and myself, we told Agwil the whole story. The young man had been respectfully silent throughout, although he showed distinct interest in it. Currently, the two of them were discussing about what to do next, while his Pokemon, Mirage, Serac, and myself lay around. "So, you're traveling with Agwil?" I asked Serac, lying by herself under a tree. The Vaporeon looked up for a while, then nodded. "She's a little shy," Mirage whispered to me. "Doesn't look like the talkative type either." The Ponyta trotted over to her and bent her head low. I saw the silent Vaporeon giggle and strained to hear what they were saying. "Sorry, girls only." Mirage waved me off by cocking her head to the side. "Geez, there's just no figuring a female." So I turned my attention to Jade and Agwil instead. "You sure about that?" Agwil was asking. "Yeah, definitely. I have an uncle on Cinnabar Island who's into this kind of genetic stuff. Besides, the old man still owes me a favor or two. He'll help out." "Seems like you've made your decision then." "Yes, I hate having to leave without Chris and the other Pokemon, but I've got to do something before I end up looking like the big bad breath dragon here." I was about to respond to that when I heard a roar from behind me. I could tell that it was a pretty large creature, and it was also right behind me. Growling, I jumped out of the way just in case it was larger than I was. Just in time, too, as the huge mass of an Ursaring came charging out from the cover of the forest. However, it hadn't been aiming for me, but the humans instead. "Watch out!" I yelled. Agwil was fast enough to dash clear. Jade, however, stumbled and took a full blow from the massive bear. With a cry of pain, he went over the edge of the cliff. "Jade!" I roared. Spreading my wings, I dashed for the cliff. I was so focused on helping him that I forgot I wasn't high enough to evade my opponent. The Ursaring slashed me across my chest, leaving a pair of long, bloody marks. Roaring in pain, I hit the ground, clutching the wound. Then my opponent was upon me, having leapt onto my chest. That probably cracked a couple of ribs, considering the searing pain that erupted into my brain, but even then, I reacted and caught his killer jaws as they were going for my neck. It was strong, and I desperately shoved with all I had to keep his dagger-like teeth away. I dug my claws into the flesh around the snout. It caused him to jerk back a little, enough for me to get the correct angle and blast him with the deadly flames from my mouth. It staggered back, grasping its burnt shoulder, and was immediately assaulted by Mirage and Serac. Mirage charged and kicked its chest with their hooves, while Serac clambered up onto his shoulder and bit down. "Go help Jade!" Agwil yelled from across the battlefield. "We'll take care of things here!" Nodding, I ran towards the cliff's edge. I saw Agwil attempting to get to Jade's backpack, which contained the other Pokeballs. The Ursaring threw Serac off and fired a Hyper Beam. The breath attack barely missed Agwil, but caused a small explosion that threw him down. "Storm! Agwil! Help me!" I heard Jade yell. Running faster, I looked over the side of the cliff to see Jade clinging to a tree root for all he was worth. He was far too down for me to reach, but I noticed something else that almost made me laugh. I heard a scream and turned to see the Ursaring strangling Mirage in a chokehold. "Mirage! Ah! Help! Can't breathe!" That was when Urgez burst onto the scene. Jade's recently named Electabuzz rammed the bear from behind, causing it to drop the exhausted Ponyta. "That's no way to treat a lady," he growled like a knight in shining armor. He let loose his Thunderbolt attack. The shocked Ursaring only got angrier and turned its attention towards him instead. Urgez met his enemy head-on, engaging in a vicious pushing and shoving match. "Hey, what are you waiting for, Storm? Help!" Jade shouted again. I'd forgotten about him. "I'm not seeing things, am I?" I asked myself, taking another look at him. "Does me hanging off a cliff about to fall to my death look like one of your fantasies?" Jade yelled, starting to get pissed. "Okay, maybe it is, but just help me anyway!" I was sure of it now. He had claws now, though they were 5 digits instead of a Charizard's 3. And he had something else, too. "Jade," I told him, "those things growing out of your back happen to be called wings!" Chris's perspective. A nauseating feeling brought me back to consciousness. So far, I'd been getting major shocks and setbacks every time I'd opened my eyes, and I was beginning to dread waking up in this state. First thing I noticed was that I was lying on my stomach in a smaller cage in a different room. Expected, considering Team Rocket would usually keep the disobedient and rebellious Pokemon away from the rest. I could see some blurred object at my snout and realized it was a muzzle. My claws, too, were tightly bound and tied behind my back. I could still feel some other leather straps around my body, and I guessed they were to immobilize my wings. Unable to even stand up, I squirmed and struggled about for a while until I felt like it was a futile effort. Using the bars of the cage to try and get my muzzle off wasn't much help either. After I nearly suffocated myself when I accidentally moved a section of the muzzle straps over my nose. Utterly depressed, I lay back down to accept my fate. Would I spend the rest of my life trapped in a Pokemon's body, condemned to work as a Team Rocket slave? I forced myself not to think about that. And my wounds ached badly too. The cuts probably hadn't been cleaned, as they'd immediately secured me and tossed me into the cage. Great, maybe they'll just get infected and I'll die. I froze, hearing the sound of a door opening. My sense of smell told me it was the female Rocket from earlier on, even before I saw her, the same one who'd whipped me badly. I didn't know what I felt as she walked over and knelt beside the cage. "Oh, you're awake. Are you all right?" she asked, reaching out to touch my head. I pulled my head away, doing my best to growl with the muzzle on. "Yeah, I guess you recognize me," she sighed. "And you probably hate me too. But please, if you can understand, I'm really sorry about that." From the tone of her voice, she did sound pretty sincere about it. I'd been avoiding meeting her gaze up till now, and I looked up at her. Now without her cap on, I could clearly see her face. And I was surprised, really, because she wasn't too old, probably 15 or 16 years. Still, I'd been younger when I joined Team Rocket, just that I looked much older than I really was. She was slim and yet looked strong, with black hair coming down past her shoulder level. Her brown eyes showed nothing of any form of trickery, but I wasn't ready to make any conclusions yet. "Those other two guys there really suck up to my supervisor, so I gotta act tough in front of them." She looked at me and laughed slightly. "Last thing I need is another pay cut. I've got a huge debt to pay off, thanks to that stupid old bastard of a father I had." I watched her with interest as she got up and paced around the cage, always keeping one hand on top of it. "Damned old man," she continued. "He kept on loaning money from Team Rocket for his research. Finally, he borrowed too much and was never able to pay back his debts. They took him out, permanently. And my mom was even more idiotic, killing herself in a heartbreak over the damned old fool. So naturally, they took me, of course. So here I am, working to pay off my family's debts." That's one of the more tragic TR stories, I thought, but certainly up their alley. Although I had no way to say anything to her. "Oh yeah, I came here to clean those wounds of yours." She knelt down beside me and pulled a cloth out of her pouch strapped around her waist. She carefully poured some liquid onto the piece of cloth. "Okay, this is gonna hurt a little bit." "Wait a sec," I sniffed. "Iodine solution? Shit, that's gonna hurt a lot." I immediately felt the sting of the antiseptic solution. My human side knew it was to clean the wounds, but my Pokemon instincts told me to scream and run. Since I was able to do neither of the latter two, I struggled about wildly. "Calm down, just a little longer." The girl used her free hand to hold the back of my neck down. I'm sure she must have seen my eyes go wide and heard my muffled cries. Finally, she was done with the iodine and started putting a bandage in place. "There, not so bad, right?" She put on a smile while she worked. However, it quickly faded. "I don't want to be working here, ever. Someday I'll pay off everything, and then I'll be out of here, living my own life and not caring about some mistake my godforsaken old man made. Getting out of this organization is the hard part, girl. I was good and probably lucky too," I said silently. I was actually beginning to be able to relate to this girl's story. Except I brought the whole mess upon myself, by myself. "But I don't think I can say the same for you," she sniffed, her eyes tearing up. "I really don't know what they're gonna do with you, but it'll most likely be a hard life for you too. But who knows, maybe you'll be free someday too." "I don't think I can help you out either, even though I want to," she said sadly, picking the rest of her items up. "I can barely take care of myself now. The world's harsh and it's every man for himself." That sounded a lot like myself in the early days. The excuse I'd used to give my friends about why I joined Team Rocket. She then stood up and looked at me, shaking her head. "Heh, here I am spilling my guts to a wild scyther," she laughed, wiping her face. "You probably don't even understand me. In some ways it may be better too. I just need to get something off my chest. After all, I don't get a chance to apologize to all the Pokemon I have to whip up." The girl began walking towards the door, but took one last look at me. "Oh, by the way, my name's Nala. Not like it'll matter to you anyway. Goodbye then." Maybe somehow we'll see each other again. Then the door closed and she was gone. I was left alone again. However, a new batch of emotions had flooded into me, many that I couldn't really explain, but the one thing I knew was that I had to fight on. I didn't know if my friends would ever find me, so I had only myself to rely on. This was my new reality, and I was stuck in it. Night Slice's perspective. The attack came without warning, a set of darts flying out of the hidden section on the wall. Luminar instantly blasted them to bits with his thunderbolt, with Riptide doing likewise with Psychic. A hidden section opened up, and a trio of Golbats came out in attack formation. "Sleep powder 'em!" I told Ashura. The Ivysaur complied, sending all three on an express ticket to Dreamland, their limp forms hitting the floor with a thud. While the automatic defenses kept on going, a pair of masked ninjas appeared. Gesturing for the Pokemon to keep back, I readied myself. I was unarmed, but I was still confident on taking them out. After all, I was sure they'd never encountered a human with a Scyther's fighting experience. One attacked immediately, rushing forward. I sidestepped slightly and moved into his position, so I was right next to him. I brought my forearm up, right into his face, causing him to stumble over. I ducked as the other one swung something at my head from behind, and I used a low backward thrust to take his feet out from under him. That was when I saw Luminar slip up. He'd taken a hit from one of the darts and didn't seem to notice the new set of shurikens flying towards him. "Luminar, watch out!" I yelled. I was too late for him to react, but I still could. Taking a running start, I jumped and swung my left hand into the path of the flying stars, forgetting that it was no longer a sword-like claw. Time seemed to slow to a stop. It looked like I was going to end up with a severe cut, but in the split second before they made contact, I saw my hand change back to normal. Normal as in my Scyther claw, that was. I heard the clang as my claw sliced the throwing stars into pieces. Then time sped up again, and I rolled over, with my hand back to a human one. I accidentally pressed my left palm on a stray spike, causing me to cry out in pain. "Stop! Now!" a voice ordered. Immediately, all traps discontinued their assault. The locked door finally opened, and a black-haired man stepped into the room. The two ninjas bowed to him, then quickly left after the gesture for them to do so. It was Koga, the ninja master I'd been seeking. "I'm sorry, but I had to test you first to see if you were sincerely trustworthy," Koga said, walking over. "When I saw you taking the blow for the Jolteon like that, I knew it to be true." "Accepted it," I muttered, clutching my bleeding left hand. "It was good practice anyway, so no hard feelings." "Indeed, and I believe we both have some explaining to do." He nodded, offering a hand to help me up. "But let's get you to the medical bay first." Jade's perspective. Wings? I had wings? It was getting from bad to worse. But since I had them, might as well see if they worked. My wings responded to my commands as I flew up, landing beside Firestorm. My hands were starting to become claws, too, making me look like some freaky cross between a human and a dragon. "Now you're a fine sight indeed," Firestorm laughed. "Shut up," I muttered. "I'm the one who's supposed to make the jokes around here." "Excuse me," Agua waved, pointing to the battle, "but I believe they need help." No sooner had he said that, Firestorm was already there, charging into the distracted Ursaring and hitting it from the side. The bear turned to attack him, but Firestorm blocked the slash and counterattacked with several punches. Urgez soon joined the punching match. Although it was no easy task, together the Charizard and Electabuzz drove their opponent back towards the edge of the cliff. The Ursaring sensed their plan and furiously roared, pushing against them in spite of the punches and slashes it was receiving. "Persistent bastard!" Firestorm cursed. A random swing suddenly knocked Urgez over. Firestorm immediately jumped back and let loose with his flamethrower. "It's far too strong to be just a wild Pokemon," I thought. I knew I had to help, and this time I actually could. I held out my hands and focused, feeling a fiery power build up within me. A fireball formed in my hands, ready for action. "Storm! Fire in the hole!" I yelled, tossing the fireball with all my might. Firestorm complied, gracefully leaping aside as my attack got the Ursaring right in the eyes. It gave one final cry of fury before toppling over the cliff.